For this video, I'm going to be exploring the text side of it a bit and some of the advantages and disadvantages of using functions instead of all these modules. I like this. It works well with my brain. I like to see everything laid out before me, and as long as all the different boxes and triggers has only one or maybe two different functions to accomplish, it's really easy for me to dive in and troubleshoot if I have a problem with my mission not working correctly. Once you put a lot of different functionalities into a single trigger, for example, this trigger is going to end this task, start that task, cancel the third task, and maybe even make the fourth task fail. You have a lot of single points of failure that might be hard to sort out when you're going back to troubleshoot. Now, a second thing that makes me like this is that it gives me control, as I've been discussing in previous videos as well. It gives me more control over which notification pops up when. I can time them. So having control over those kind of aspects are important in my mind. Moving forward, we are now going to set up a similar event chain as I've shown in my previous videos using the functions. You can find every function in the game in the functions viewer up here under tools where they are described. And this may be completely Greek to you. It might be slightly Slavic. It might be some variation of hard to decipher, depending on how used you are to code. I'm not a coder, as you'll probably notice when you hear me typing on my keyboard. I'm not a hacker in any way or form, but I think after spending time with the editor since Operation Flashpoint, I know enough about the logic to be able to explain it to you sufficiently. First of all, I'm going to use two functions here, the task create function and the task set state function. And those will replace the create task module and the set task state module that we used in the previous episodes. And you can find them and read the description how to implement them here. But as I said, this wall of text might be a bit hard to decipher for some of us. Second thing I'm going to note is that I've put a variable name on my player group this time, so I have a group name for him. That becomes important when we're going to discuss ownership. Let me just show you what I mean by having several missions assigned at the same time and I can see everything to begin with. Because arguably one of the more efficient ways to think about task creation is to just create all the tasks to begin with and then assign them as the mission moves along. And we can do that from the initialization field in the general attributes. I can create all my tasks in this text box. So to start with, I want 3 different tasks. I want to have a task to move to the garbage pile, followed by a task to kill an enemy operative named Hassan, and then I want to move the players to move into a Hummer standing by. So I'll start by the first task, and to create a task, I'm going to start with an array, and this array will contain all the different parameters necessary to create the task. So the first thing for the array is the owner, and I'm going to use group 1 as the owner. For this mission, as there is only one player in here, I could use just the player name, P1, but if I want to add more playable characters to this group for the players to play, if I got like 5 guys who want to play the main mission, having the group name is of course beneficial, so I don't have to make a second array here with all the different player names, but I could do that as well. Then I'm going to give the task its name. I'll call it task 1. And then comes an array, so I'll start with a square bracket again. Quotation marks and the description text, which we've seen earlier, shows up on the map menu. And then the title, which is both shown on the map menu, but also is the text of the notification that pops up on screen for the player. So the first one is move to the garbage pile, sorry. So our description and our title. Then we have the next parameter, which is destination. And there are several different ways to do that. You can use an object name. You can use an array which contains the object name and the Boolean value true, and I'll discuss that a little bit. I can use a marker name, and I can use XYZ coordinates in an array. So for those of you who are familiar with those terms, you're free to use whatever you like for this demonstration. I'm going to use an object name, and that object is object 1, which is the yellow tire which is stuck next to the garbage pile. If I just put object 1, there is actually a functionality here which makes it so that the players will only see an approximate destination marker for that actual object. They won't see the actual destination marker move to the actual object until they can see the object, or I think they're close. I'm not exactly sure what switches those two states from approximate to actual, but it has those two states. So it will show an approximate location until a certain point where the players know where the actual object is, and then it will switch the destination to that object. Really cool if you're looking for intel, for example, in an urbanized area, so you know that the destination marker is pointing to a group of buildings, but you're not sure exactly where what you're looking for is. If you do want to force the task to show its destination at the actual object all the time, you can switch out the object name with a short array called just object name, comma, true. And that will force it to show the actual position of the object at all times. If you use a marker, you'll just put the name of the marker in quotation marks. Then I'll put down the state I want this to start in, and I'll put down created. So the task is created. And then the rest of the parameters is actually, next one is priority, which you can give numeric values so that if several tasks are active at the same time, the game engine will actually prioritize them in the order you tell them. So the ones that's actually highlighted in yellow is the one with the highest priority and so forth. We can just put that one to 1. And the next one is a bit important. It's notification. So you can actually turn off the notification for a task if you don't want it to pop up on screen here. I'll put it to true for this. False will remove the notification, of course. Then I'll have to call on the function. So I use the call command and then the function name, which is bis fnc task create. So Bohemia Interactive Studios function task create is basically what's that. So almost all of the different functions that you're going to use in the Arma editor has this bis. There are some that come from mods like Alive and Ace, which will have often replace this with their mod name. And I'm going to repeat this task for my next 3 tasks as well. But of course, I'm going to just change the parameters. So this one is going to be kill Hassan. I'm going to put it on a destination on Hassan, and now I'm going to put it into created state again. So for the final task for this mission, it's going to be task 3. And it's going to be enter the Hummer. And I'm going to put the location at car 1. Okay, so now I am with some quick copy pasting and some quick typing, I actually created 3 different tasks. Then again, you might argue it would have been just as easy to just click and drag down 3 modules from the graphical user interface. Either way is acceptable as long as it's what you're comfortable with. Okay, so now we have the 3 tasks are created. We don't see anything on the map. Again, one of my preferences is that I want to see stuff on the map. So I know it's there. I don't trust that I've done everything correctly and that these tasks are now actually going to apply themselves to the game correctly. Now these tasks were created, so I'm just going to add a trigger to assign the first task, and then we're going to pop very quickly into to see what happens here. So this is task 1 assigned. Just going to put it to true. I'm going to keep it at 3 seconds now, the timer, because I'm a single player in this mission, so I won't need as much of a countdown to accommodate for different clients trying to connect to the host and stuff like that. And in the on activation field, I'm going to use a second function that is important if we want to work with tasks in function language, and that is set or task set state rather. And I'm going to put my task, the task that I want to affect, in the beginning of an array, like so, task 1 in quotation marks, and then the state I want it to switch to, assigned, as this was the assign trigger. Then I'm going to call this function task set state. So after 3 seconds, after the mission spawns in, this is going to switch the first task into assigned. We're going to jump in right now to see what I mean about revealing too much to the players if I do it this way. It's a totally feasible way of doing stuff, but for me, I think I over-reveal things to the player. So now this task has been assigned, and I don't see any destination markers or anything. I haven't for the other ones because they aren't assigned. But if I go into the map and under tasks, you'll see that even though these tasks haven't been assigned, they are only in the created state, they show up as available tasks to the players. And I can actually assign myself or highlight the enter the Hummer task before time here. So I don't like this method of doing it. I like to sequence. Often I like to sequence the mission more when it comes to tasks, and I'll put the overview of the mission for the players in the mission briefings. But again, it's all down to matter of preference and matter of taste. So if this floats your boat, go ahead and do it like this. I am going to show you kind of like a hybrid approach to this situation. So I'm going to pop back into the attributes general, and I'm going to take the first task, and I'm going to scissor it out of there, and I'm going to paste it into my first trigger, my task 1 assign trigger, and I'm going to put it directly into assigned, as I did in the graphical user interface. I don't bother very often with using the created state because it makes the task list populate on the map. So if I stick to triggering tasks into assigned state from the beginning, I can have much more control over what is shown to the players and not. So I'll put down the completed trigger as well, successful. Task 1 successful, which will be a any player present trigger with about 7 meters of diameter. and on activation, I'm then going to use my function, which is task1 succeeded, and then call on all that stuff BizFNC task set state. My next trigger will be the task to assign trigger. This will activate once the previous has activated. The same kind of logic that I did with my previous quick tips. And the same kind of problem I have with my mouse as well, but I will work around that. Yeah, so this will activate once task 1 is successful. And what I'll do, I'll jump back into general and I'll take the second task and I'll cut it. And I'll paste that directly into the on activation field here. And I'll switch the created state to assigned. So by getting rid of the created state on this task from the get-go, I remove it from the list for the player, so they won't see it until it's actually available. And I'll quickly pop down the successful trigger for this as well. So this is not a live Hassan, which will switch the state of task 2 into succeeded. Oops. So I'm going to jump back in now just to see how the task to kill Hassan will now not be available in the task menu on the map for the players, while the Hummer still will, because that's going to spawn from the initialization field as a created task. So this works perfectly fine. But as you can see, the enter the Hummer is still available to the player as an option since it has been created in the initialization field. But these triggers still do all the work. We'll wait a little bit and then we get the task assigned. And you saw for a moment there that this task assigned itself because it was available there. And now it pops up again. So there is some logic to this that I'm not too fan of. This. That's why I like to control it with as many triggers as possible. So if now I do a task 3 assign trigger here, which is trigger activated, task 2 successful. Okay, and then I jump back into the general settings. I cut out that piece of code. Let's get rid of some spaces there and switch it to assigned. And then we'll just put down the successful trigger for that one. So, oops, don't forget the quotation marks. Task 3 succeeded. like so. That should be in order, I think. So you see what we've actually gotten rid of here is all the modules. We're still left with a similar number of triggers using this method, but I feel that this method is kind of a trade-off or a balance between effectivizing the graphical user interface a bit by removing all the boxes, but still regaining control over, as I said, what is shown to the players at what time, whether it's the notification that those don't pop up on screen at one time in random order, or the actual tasks themselves in the task menu on the map. So just quickly enter this again to see if everything is working properly, and I hope you've seen enough of my plundering in the different function arrays or parameters of the different functions to see how that works. So this is assigned. It has been assigned to the object, or destination is put to the object. I'm moving over here. Now this is not going to pop up briefly as last time because it's still not active at all. So it will only pop up after I've told it to pop up by killing Hassan. And there you go. So, and you can of course do this. You just use several triggers if you want to have different states to a certain task. You make a cancelled or a failed trigger as normal, and you just use the function to call it as I did with the succeeded. It's not a big deal. Now I could of course make this even more effective using code, and I might just do that just to show you how it looks and how it feels when I do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to move this trigger activation into this one. So this is now both going to switch the task 1 to succeeded and create a new task 2 in the assigned state. Okay. And the same with this one. I'm going to take this one and move it into this one. So this will now both succeed task 2 and create the next task. So now we're down to 4 triggers, 1 to create the initial one, 1 to succeed the first and create the second, 1 to succeed the second and create the third, and 1 to succeed the third. I could even get rid of this one, as I mentioned plenty of times, but that means the notification won't show. So I'll keep this one on a delay. Now what I've done now is that I've removed my option to delay the notification for this task. And it'll work nice or semi-decently now when there's just one task as being assigned following this task. The problem for me arises when this is not just one task, but after this task has succeeded, I want 3 tasks to happen to be assigned, and at the same time I want a 4th task to cancel. So I have potentially 5 different notifications wanting to pop up on the screen at the same time. Successful task, cancelled task, and 3 new assignments. So that's when not having control over your timers and turning notifications on and off and stuff is a bit of a drag. So, but for now, this is probably going to work nicely, but you can imagine what I mean by that. So instead of having a nice 6-second delay, which will allow the notification to stand its course all the way out and the animation all the way out from screen, this will now cause a slight overwrite, but it's not too grave. As you can see, it's livable. Problem again is if there were another 4 tasks being assigned or cancelled now. They will come in a random order. Maybe the cancel will come in the middle of 2 of the assigned. Again, it's no biggie, but for me, it's the kind of control that I want on my missions. But if you're a little less anally retentive than me, this might work perfectly for you. And as you can see then, this entire mission chain of 3 different tasks is done by only 4 triggers, and everything else is handled with function calls.